You told me that Tylee took JJ's life and then her own. How then would Tylee be able to dismember herself and bury herself if she killed herself?
So Brianna, my love for my children is eternal, and my children are eternal, and they're just in the next phase of their eternal life. And if people understood that, then they wouldn't be so set on things that happen here in this life.
But they were killed.
May 12th, 2023. A courtroom in Boise, Idaho falls silent as the jury delivers their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Lori Vallow Daybell was found guilty of all charges related to the killings of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. But what the public didn't know was the twisted family secret that had been hidden for years. A web of forbidden relationships, religious manipulation, and deadly obsession that would cost 3 innocent women their lives. Welcome to True Crime Chronicle. Tonight, we uncover the truth behind the Daybell family murders, where a man's desperate attempt to hide his inappropriate relationship with his step-cousin led to a killing spree that shocked America. Rexburg, Idaho, 2018. To their neighbors, Chad Daybell and his wife Tammy appeared to be the perfect Mormon family. Chad was a successful author of religious fiction, writing books about near-death experiences and the end times. Tammy was a beloved librarian and devoted mother to their 5 children. But Chad harbored a dark secret that would eventually destroy everything he claimed to hold sacred. Chad had been carrying on an inappropriate relationship with his step-cousin, Melanie Gibb, for nearly a decade. The relationship had begun innocently enough during family reunions, but had evolved into something far more disturbing. Chad used his religious authority and claims of prophetic visions to manipulate Melanie into believing their relationship was divinely ordained. When Chad met Lori Vallow at a religious conference in 2018, he saw an opportunity to expand his twisted spiritual empire. Lori was beautiful, charismatic, and already deeply involved in the same fringe religious beliefs that Chad used to justify his behavior. What Lori didn't know was that Chad was planning to eliminate anyone who threatened to expose his secret relationship with Melanie. His wife Tammy had begun asking questions about Chad's frequent trips and mysterious phone calls. Lori's children, Tylee and JJ, were becoming obstacles to Chad's vision of a perfect polygamous family. Chad convinced Lori that they were both translated beings destined to lead the righteous through the apocalypse. But first, they would need to remove the dark spirits standing in their way. Throughout 2019, Chad began systematically poisoning Lori's mind against her own children. He told her that both Tylee and JJ had been possessed by dark spirits and were no longer truly her children. In Chad's twisted theology, killing them would actually be an act of mercy, freeing their souls to find new bodies. But Chad's real motivation was much more sinister. Tylee, at 16, was old enough to understand that something wasn't right about Chad's relationship with Melanie. She had witnessed inappropriate interactions during family gatherings and had begun asking uncomfortable questions. JJ, Lori's adopted son, required constant care due to his autism. Chad saw him as a burden that would interfere with his plans for the future. More importantly, JJ's disability payments provided income that Chad wanted to control. Meanwhile, Chad's wife Tammy was becoming increasingly suspicious of her husband's behavior. She had discovered text messages between Chad and Melanie that clearly indicated a romantic relationship. When she confronted Chad about it, he claimed that Melanie was helping him with spiritual research for his books. But Tammy wasn't buying it. She threatened to expose Chad's affair to their church leaders and family members. In the tight-knit Mormon community where they lived, such a revelation would destroy Chad's reputation and his livelihood as a religious author. Chad realized that Tammy had to be silenced permanently. October 19th, 2019. Tammy Daybell went to bed feeling ill, complaining of nausea and fatigue. By morning, she was dead. Chad immediately called 911, claiming that his wife had died peacefully in her sleep from natural causes. He refused to allow an autopsy, insisting that their religious beliefs prohibited it. Tammy was buried quickly, and Chad began making plans to marry Lori just 2 weeks later. But what investigators would later discover was that Tammy had been poisoned with a lethal dose of medication that Chad had been secretly administering for weeks. He had been slowly increasing the dosage, making it appear as though Tammy was simply getting sicker naturally. Chad's plan seemed perfect. With Tammy dead, he could marry Lori without having to explain his relationship with Melanie. He could claim that his first wife's death was part of God's plan to bring him and Lori together. But Chad had underestimated how suspicious Tammy's sudden death would appear to her family and friends. Tammy had been healthy and active, with no history of serious illness. Her sudden death, at age 49, raised immediate red flags. When Chad married Lori in Hawaii, just 2 weeks after Tammy's funeral, the suspicions only grew stronger. Tammy's children began asking questions that Chad couldn't answer satisfactorily. He knew it was only a matter of time before someone demanded an investigation into Tammy's death. The secret he had killed to protect was still in danger of being exposed. September 2019. Tylee Ryan, Lori's 16-year-old daughter, was last seen alive on a family trip to Yellowstone National Park. According to Chad and Lori, she had decided to go live with relatives in another state. But no one could produce any evidence of where Tylee had gone. 3 weeks later, JJ Vallow disappeared. Chad and Lori claimed he had gone to stay with relatives in Arizona, but when family members tried to contact him, they were told he was too busy to talk. What really happened to these children would shock investigators when the truth finally came out. Chad had convinced Lori that both children needed to be released from their earthly bodies so their spirits could be free. On the night of September 8th, 2019, Tylee was lured to Chad's property under the pretense of helping with farm work. Chad attacked her with a pickaxe, then dismembered her body to make it easier to dispose of. Her remains were burned and buried in multiple locations around Chad's property. JJ's murder was even more calculated. Chad and Lori used his autism medication to sedate him, then suffocated him with plastic bags while he was unconscious. His small body was wrapped in plastic and buried in Chad's pet cemetery. With both children dead, Chad believed his secret was finally safe. There were no longer any witnesses to his inappropriate relationship with Melanie, and the insurance money from their deaths would fund his and Lori's new life together. But Chad had made a fatal error in judgment. The disappearance of 2 children simultaneously was too suspicious to ignore. December 2019. When Tylee and JJ failed to show up for school or contact family members for months, relatives finally contacted police. What started as a missing persons investigation quickly became something much more serious. Investigators discovered that Chad and Lori had been lying about the children's whereabouts from the beginning. Phone records showed that neither child had been in contact with anyone since September. Financial records revealed that Chad and Lori were still collecting the children's benefits, despite claiming they were living elsewhere. The investigation took a horrifying turn when detectives began looking into Tammy Daybell's death more closely. Her body was exhumed for autopsy, revealing evidence of poisoning that had been missed during the initial examination. On June 9, 2020, investigators obtained a search warrant for Chad's property. Using ground-penetrating radar, they located the buried remains of both Tylee and JJ. The condition of the bodies provided clear evidence that both children had been murdered. Chad was arrested at his home, while Lori was taken into custody in Hawaii, where she had been hiding since the investigation began. But even after their arrests, the full truth about Chad's motivation remained hidden. It wasn't until Melanie Gibb came forward with information about her relationship with Chad that investigators understood the real reason behind the murders. Chad had killed 3 people, his wife and 2 innocent children, all to protect a secret relationship that had been going on for years. On May 12, 2023, Lori was found guilty of all charges related to the killings of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. On July 31st, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Chad Daybell's trial concluded in 2024, where he too was found guilty and sentenced to death for his role in the murders. During the investigation, it was revealed that Chad had been manipulating multiple women through his religious teachings, using his claimed prophetic abilities to convince them that inappropriate relationships were part of God's plan. The case exposed a dark underbelly of religious extremism, where manipulation and abuse were disguised as spiritual enlightenment. Chad had used his position as a religious author to groom and control vulnerable women, ultimately leading to the deaths of 3 innocent people. Melanie Gibbs' testimony proved crucial in securing convictions. She revealed how Chad had used religious manipulation to maintain their inappropriate relationship for years, and how his fear of exposure had driven him to murder. The families of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ finally received the justice they had been seeking, but the scars left by Chad and Lori's crimes will never fully heal. The Daybell case serves as a chilling reminder that religious authority can be weaponized by those with the darkest intentions. Chad Daybell used his claimed spiritual gifts to manipulate and control, ultimately leading to the deaths of his own wife and 2 innocent children. His desperate attempt to hide his inappropriate relationship with his step-cousin cost 3 lives and destroyed countless others. In the end, the secret he killed to protect was exposed anyway, proving that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you try to bury it. What drives someone to murder their own family to protect a lie? Perhaps that's a question we'll never fully understand. But one thing remains certain. The price of Chad's deception was paid in innocent blood. If you or someone you know is experiencing religious manipulation or abuse, the National Domestic Violence provides confidential support 24/7. Thank you for watching True Crime Chronicles. Subscribe for more in-depth investigations into America's most shocking cases. And remember, justice may be delayed, but it's never forgotten. October 9th, 2020. A quiet Friday morning in Oak Cliff, Texas. Jennifer Faith walks out of her home with her husband Jamie, their dog trotting beside them. 1 minute into their routine walk, 7 gunshots shatter the morning silence. Jamie Faith, a 49-year-old American Airlines technology director, lies bleeding on the pavement. His wife Jennifer screams hysterically as a masked gunman tackles her to the ground before fleeing in a black pickup truck with a distinctive T decal. But what if I told you that the woman crying over her dying husband's body had orchestrated the entire murder? That she had manipulated a brain-damaged veteran into believing her husband was abusing her? That she had been planning this execution for months while sleeping next to her victim every night? This is the story of Jennifer Faith, a woman who turned love into a weapon, trust into betrayal, and a morning dog walk into a calculated assassination. A case so twisted that even the federal judge called her pure evil before sentencing her to life in prison. Welcome to True Crime Chronicles. I'm your host, and today we're exploring the Jennifer Faith case, where a wife's affair turned deadly and a husband's trust cost him everything. Jamie and Jennifer Faith appear to have it all. Married for over a decade, they lived in a modest home in Oak Cliff, a historic neighborhood in Dallas, Texas. Jamie worked as a technology director for American Airlines, a stable job that provided for their family. Jennifer seemed like the devoted wife, always posting happy photos on social media, talking about their future plans, their shared dreams. But beneath this facade of domestic bliss, something had been rotting for years. Something that would ultimately destroy everything they had built together. You see, Jennifer Faith had been living a double life. While Jamie went to work every day, trusting his wife completely, Jennifer had been conducting a secret affair with a man from her past. Not just any man, a disabled Army veteran named Darren Ruben Lopez, someone she called her one and only love. Lopez lived in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee, over 300 miles away from Dallas. But distance meant nothing to Jennifer. She had been sending him money, gifts, even providing him with credit cards that she secretly paid off. She was financing her own betrayal with money that should have been going to her family. But here's where it gets disturbing. Lopez wasn't just Jennifer's lover. He was a man struggling with traumatic brain injury from his military service in Iraq. A vulnerable person who trusted Jennifer completely. And Jennifer was about to exploit that trust in the most horrific way imaginable. In the months leading up to that fatal October morning, Jennifer had been carefully laying the groundwork for something unthinkable. She created fake email accounts, assumed false identities, and began spinning a web of lies that would end in blood on a Dallas sidewalk. The question investigators would later ask was simple. How long had Jennifer been planning to kill her husband? And more importantly, why? To understand what happened on that October morning, we need to go back 7 months earlier. That's when Jennifer Faith began crafting what investigators would later call one of the most elaborate deception schemes they'd ever encountered. Using 2 fake email accounts, Jennifer assumed the identities of her own husband and one of her friends. But these weren't playful role-playing games. Jennifer was about to convince a brain-damaged veteran to commit murder. The emails Jennifer sent to Lopez painted a horrifying picture. She told him that Jamie Faith was physically and sexually abusing her. She described beatings, assaults, and psychological torture. To make her lies more convincing, she downloaded stock images of injuries from the internet and attached them to the emails, claiming they were photos of her own wounds. But remember, investigators would later confirm that none of this abuse ever occurred. Jennifer Faith was never abused by her husband. These were elaborate fabrications designed to manipulate a vulnerable man into becoming a killer. Think about the psychology here. Jennifer wasn't just lying to Lopez. She was weaponizing his military training, his protective instincts, his sense of honor. She was turning his desire to protect the woman he loved into a murder plot. And it worked. Over the course of 7 months, Jennifer fed Lopez a steady diet of these fake abuse stories. She portrayed herself as a helpless victim trapped in a dangerous marriage. She made Lopez believe that the only way to save her was to eliminate the threat, her husband. But Jennifer's manipulation went even deeper. She wasn't just lying about abuse. She was also planning their future together. In text messages, the pair discussed using Jamie's life insurance money to buy a home in Tennessee. Jennifer had even initiated a claim with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company for approximately $629,000 in death benefits. She was literally planning to profit from her husband's murder. Now, I want you to imagine what this looked like from Jamie Faith's perspective. He's going to work every day, coming home to a wife who kisses him hello, who makes dinner, who sleeps beside him at night. He has no idea that she's been planning his execution for months. He has no idea that she's been telling another man that he's a monster who deserves to die. The betrayal is almost incomprehensible. But Jennifer Faith wasn't finished yet. The most shocking part of her plan was still to come. October 9th, 2020. 7:30 morgens. Jennifer and Jamie Faith exit their home for what appears to be a routine morning dog walk. It's a beautiful autumn day in Oak Cliff. Neighbors are starting their morning routines. The streets are quiet. But 300 miles away in Tennessee, Darren Lopez is already on the road. He's been driving through the night, his black Nissan Titan pickup truck heading toward Dallas. In his mind, he's not going to commit murder. He's going to rescue the woman he loves from her abusive husband. Lopez arrives in Dallas and does something that reveals the premeditated nature of this crime. He doesn't go directly to the Faith home. Instead, he parks at a neighbor's house and waits. He's conducting surveillance, watching the house, learning the family's routine. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a military-style operation. At exactly 7:31 a.m., 1 minute into their walk, Lopez strikes. He emerges from his hiding spot and opens fire on Jamie Faith. 7 shots ring out in the quiet neighborhood. Jamie, who probably never saw it coming, collapses on the sidewalk. But Lopez isn't finished. He turns the gun on Jennifer, tackling her to the ground. From the outside, it looks like he's trying to kill her too. Jennifer screams, fights back, appears to be struggling for her life. But here's what investigators would later discover. This attack on Jennifer was staged. Lopez wasn't trying to kill her. He was helping her establish an alibi. The tackle, the struggle, the apparent attempt on her life. It was all theater designed to make Jennifer look like a victim instead of a perpetrator. Surveillance audio captured Jennifer's screams during the attack. Video footage showed her crying hysterically afterward. To anyone watching, She looked like a traumatized widow who had barely escaped with her own life. The performance was so convincing that when Dallas Police Detective Chris Walton interviewed Jennifer that morning, she gave what appeared to be a heartbroken widow's testimony. I turned around and I just saw this person shoot and shoot. I couldn't believe I didn't know him. Like, why? A lot of shots, 5, 6, maybe, I feel like. And he just kept going and I'm like, stop it. And then I saw the person turn and like just dark eyes coming toward me. And so I yelled no, and I started to run, and he tackled me to the ground. He was trying to attack me the whole time I was screaming. But investigators were about to uncover evidence that would expose Jennifer's lies. Evidence that would reveal the true scope of her deception. Evidence that would prove she was never a victim at all. She was the mastermind behind a cold-blooded execution. In the immediate aftermath of Jamie Faith's murder, Dallas police launched a massive investigation. They had a clear description of the suspect vehicle, a black pickup truck with a distinctive T decal on the back window. This detail would prove crucial to cracking the case. But as investigators began digging deeper, they started noticing inconsistencies in Jennifer's story. Small details that didn't quite add up. Behavior that seemed unusual for a grieving widow. The first red flag came when investigators discovered that Jennifer had been in contact with someone from her past. Phone records showed extensive communication with a man named Darren Lopez in Tennessee. When they ran his name, they discovered he was a disabled Army veteran who owned a black pickup truck. The second red flag was even more disturbing. Jennifer had launched a GoFundMe campaign called Support Jennifer Faith to help with expenses following her husband's death. But investigators discovered that money from this campaign was being used to pay off credit cards that Jennifer had given to Lopez. Think about that for a moment. Well-meaning people were donating money to help a grieving widow, and she was using those donations to support her husband's killer. But the most damning evidence came from Jennifer's own actions. When she learned that police were looking for a truck with a T decal, she did something that revealed her true involvement in the crime. She appeared on Dallas's ABC affiliate WFAA and made a public plea for help finding the killer. She looked directly into the camera and begged the public to help investigators locate the truck with the decal. But immediately after the interview, Jennifer texted Lopez with a warning. I woke up in a bit of a panic. Something is eating away at me, telling me you need to take the sticker out of the back window of the truck. I don't normally overreact like this. Really think you need to get that sticker off ASAP like today. Lopez removed the sticker the following day. Do you see what happened here? Jennifer went on television and publicly asked for help finding a truck with a specific decal, then immediately warned the driver to remove that decal. She was actively obstructing the investigation into her own husband's murder. But investigators were closing in. They had phone records, financial records, and a growing body of evidence that painted a picture of conspiracy. What they discovered next would expose the full scope of Jennifer's deception. In January 2021, just 3 months after the murder, investigators asked Jennifer to come in for questioning. Her response revealed just how deep her deception ran. January 10th, 2021. Jennifer Faith knows the walls are closing in. Investigators have been asking questions, following paper trails, connecting dots. She's been called in for questioning the next day, and she knows this could be the end of her elaborate deception. So she does what she's been doing for months. She lies. Jennifer sends a text message to Lopez that investigators would later use as evidence of consciousness of guilt. Don't text me Monday. I'm going to factory reset my phone on Sunday night after deleting texts. But Jennifer was too late. Federal agents had already been building a case against both her and Lopez. They had identified the fake email accounts, traced the financial transactions, and connected Lopez to the murder weapon. On January 11th, 2021, just one day after Jennifer tried to destroy evidence, ATF agents arrested Darren Lopez at his home in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee. The firearm used to kill Jamie Faith was recovered inside Lopez's residence. But even facing arrest, Jennifer couldn't stop lying. Even with Lopez in custody, she continued to maintain her web of deception. She sent messages through a third party, proclaiming her loyalty to the man who had murdered her husband. I am with him. will always be with him regardless of whatever has happened. I needed to be cautious because every communication is being monitored. Please tell him ASAP I will always be his. Think about what this means. Jennifer Faith's husband had been dead for just 4 months, and she was already professing eternal love for his killer. She was more concerned about supporting Lopez than she was about getting justice for Jamie. On February 2nd, 2021, Jennifer Faith was arrested and charged with obstruction of justice. But federal prosecutors weren't finished. They had uncovered evidence of something much worse than obstruction. They had evidence of murder for hire. In September 2021, prosecutors added a charge of using interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire, an offense that carries a potential death sentence. Jennifer Faith was facing the possibility of execution for her role in her husband's murder. But prosecutors offered her a deal: plead guilty and receive life in prison instead of the death penalty. And that the full scope of her deception was finally revealed. February 2022. Jennifer Faith stood before a federal judge and admitted to orchestrating her husband's murder. But her confession revealed details that were even more disturbing than investigators had imagined. She admitted that she had never been abused by her husband. The photos of injuries she had sent to Lopez were fake, downloaded from the internet, and used to manipulate a brain-damaged veteran into believing she was in danger. She admitted that she had used Lopez's military training and protective instincts against him. She had turned his desire to save her into a weapon of murder. She admitted that she had planned to use her husband's life insurance money to start a new life with Lopez in Tennessee. She had literally planned to profit from Jamie's death. But perhaps most disturbing of all, she admitted that she had been present during the murder. She had walked out of her home with her husband, knowing that Lopez was waiting to kill him. She had looked Jamie in the eye, knowing it would be the last time he saw her alive. The betrayal was complete. Jennifer Faith had convinced a vulnerable man to murder her husband, then played the grieving widow while secretly supporting the killer with money donated by people who believed she was a victim. But even in her confession, Jennifer couldn't stop lying. Even after admitting to the crime, she continued to send messages to Lopez claiming she had never deceived him. Just a quick note to say, I never lied to you, and I never sent you emails from any account but mine, as me. There's a ton more I wish I could say, but I can't right now. On June 21st, 2022, Jennifer Faith appeared before United States District Judge Jane J. Boyle for sentencing. The judge had reviewed all the evidence, heard all the testimony, and seen all the lies. What she said next would echo through the courtroom and define Jennifer Faith's legacy forever. Judge Jane J. Boyle looked directly at Jennifer Faith and delivered a judgment that captured the horror of her crimes. Pure evil. Those are the words the judge used to describe Jennifer Faith before sentencing her to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. She also ordered Jennifer to pay $6,500 in restitution to Jamie's family for funeral expenses and a $250,000 fine. U.S. Attorney Chad Meacham summed up the case perfectly. MS. Faith put on quite a performance in the wake of her husband's murder. She poured out her sob story to reporters and law enforcement, then headed home to orchestrate her cover-up. But crocodile tears didn't stop the feds. The Jennifer Faith case reveals something deeply disturbing about human nature. It shows how trust can be weaponized, how love can be manipulated, and how the people closest to us can sometimes be the greatest threat to our safety. Jamie Faith went to work every day, came home to his wife, and never suspected that she was planning his execution. He trusted her completely, and that trust cost him everything. Darren Lopez, the man who pulled the trigger, remains in custody facing both state murder charges and federal firearms charges. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges, but the evidence against him is overwhelming. In the end, Jennifer Faith's elaborate deception destroyed 3 lives: her husband's, her own, and that of the man she manipulated into becoming a killer. She turned love into a weapon and trust into a death sentence. So what can we learn from this case? Perhaps it's that the most dangerous predators aren't the ones who attack strangers in dark alleys. They're the ones who sleep beside us, who know our routines, who have access to our lives and our trust. Jennifer Faith will spend the rest of her life in federal prison, and Jamie Faith will never come home. A marriage that should have been built on love and trust instead became a monument to betrayal and murder. This has been True Crime Chronicles. Thank you for joining us for this investigation into one of the most shocking cases of spousal murder in recent memory. If you found this case as disturbing as we did, let us know in the comments below. What do you think motivated Jennifer Faith to orchestrate such an elaborate murder plot? And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that shocked the world. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the greatest danger comes from the people we trust most.
The case making national headlines, a well-known dentist accused of killing his wife of 23 years by slowly poisoning her protein shakes with cyanide. Authorities say his slow, methodical plan landed his wife in the hospital 3 times over 10 days. Tonight, James Craig has been found guilty of killing his wife, Angela, the mother of his 6 children, now convicted of first-degree murder. The jury...
I feel drugged. Those were the desperate words Angela Craig texted her husband from her hospital bed in March 2023. She had consumed nothing that morning except her protein shake. The same protein shake her dentist husband James had prepared for her. Within hours, the 43-year-old mother of 6 would be brain dead. What Angela didn't know was that the man she trusted most in the world had been slowly poisoning her for weeks. And this wasn't his first attempt. Welcome to True Crime Chronicle, and today we explore into the case of James and Angela Craig case. Kindly follow if you're just meeting us for the first time, and don't forget to click on the notification bell. To everyone who knew them, James and Angela Craig seemed like the perfect Colorado family. Married for 23 years, they had built a life together, 6 children, a successful dental practice in Aurora, and what appeared to be a solid partnership. James was a respected dentist, well regarded in his community. Angela was a devoted mother who trusted her husband completely. But behind the facade of their picture-perfect life, something far more chilling was taking place. In February 2023, James Craig attended a dental conference, a routine professional event that would set a deadly chain of events in motion. There, he met Karen Kane, an orthodontist from Texas. What started as a professional encounter quickly became something else entirely. Kane later told investigators that James had claimed he was going through a divorce. He painted himself as a man trapped in an unhappy marriage, desperate to start fresh. She had no idea that Angela Craig was very much alive, and that her husband was already planning her murder. But while James was weaving lies in Texas, he was also making purchases that would shock investigators. Purchases that had nothing to do with dentistry. What police discovered later would chill them to the bone. Using a secret email account that could only be accessed from a computer in his dental office, James Craig had been conducting disturbing research. His search history revealed an obsession with murder. How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in autopsy? Top 5 undetectable poisons that show no signs of foul play. On February 27, 2023, just days after meeting his mistress, James ordered arsenic online. The deadly package arrived at the Craig family home on March 4th. 2 days later, Angela Craig was rushed to the hospital for the first time. It feels more like I feel when I take heavy meds, and everything adjusts and moves slowly. Angela texted her husband from her hospital bed, describing her mysterious symptoms. The doctors were baffled. Her husband's response? Just for the record, I didn't drug you. But James Craig was lying, and this was just the beginning. Because while Angela was fighting for her life in the hospital, her husband was already ordering his next weapon. After Angela's first hospitalization, you might think James would have been concerned, would have stayed by her side. Instead, he was planning the next phase of his deadly plot. On March 8th, while his wife was still recovering, James ordered potassium cyanide, one of the most lethal poisons known to man. The package arrived at his dental office on March 13th. Angela Craig was hospitalized 2 more times in the following days. Each time, her symptoms grew worse. Severe headaches, dizziness, a feeling that someone was drugging her. On her 3rd and final hospital visit, the mother of 6 began seizing. She was transferred to intensive care, unresponsive. On March 18, 2023, Angela Craig was declared brain dead. The coroner would later determine she died from acute cyanide and tetrahydrozoline poisoning, with arsenic also found in her system. But James Craig made one critical mistake. He had ordered the cyanide to his dental practice, where an office manager saw the package. When Angela was dying in the hospital, Craig's dental partner Ryan Redfern received a phone call that would unravel everything. There would be no medical reason for a dentist's office to need potassium cyanide, Redfern told a nurse. That nurse contacted law enforcement. When confronted, James Craig tried to spin one final lie. But the truth was already catching up to him. When Ryan Redfern confronted severe headaches, dizziness, a feeling that someone was drugging her. On her third and final hospital visit, the mother of 6 began seizing. She was transferred to intensive care, unresponsive. On March 18, 2023, Angela Craig was declared brain dead. The coroner would later determine she died from acute cyanide and tetrahydrozoline poisoning, with arsenic also found in her system. But James Craig made one critical mistake. He had ordered the cyanide to his dental practice, where an office manager saw the package. When Angela was dying in the hospital, Craig's dental partner Ryan Redfern received a phone call that would unravel everything. There would be no medical reason for a dentist's office to need potassium cyanide, Redfern told a nurse. That nurse contacted law enforcement. When confronted, James Craig tried to spin one final lie. But the truth was already catching up to him. When Ryan Redfern confronted his partner about the cyanide, James Craig initially tried to fabricate a story. Then he admitted to ordering it, but claimed Angela had asked him to buy it, suggesting she was suicidal. It was another lie in a web of deception that was rapidly unraveling. Investigators discovered that James had been having Angela committed as a suicide risk during her hospitalizations, a manipulation tactic to discredit any suspicions she might voice. One sister told police that years earlier, James had actually drugged Angela to prevent her from stopping his own suicide attempt. The pattern of control and manipulation went back years. But perhaps most shocking of all, while awaiting trial in jail, James Craig attempted to orchestrate yet another murder. He tried to convince a fellow inmate to kill Detective Bobby Olson, the lead investigator on his case. "The worst, dirtiest detective in the world is on my case," he wrote in intercepted letters. He even offered what prosecutors called essentially a blank check to fabricate evidence that would support his claims that Angela was suicidal. In July 2025, James Craig was found guilty of murdering his wife and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The man who had sworn to love and protect Angela Craig had systematically poisoned her while carrying on an affair and planning his new life. For 23 years, Angela Craig trusted the man she married. She trusted him to make her protein shakes. She trusted him when she felt sick. She trusted him even as he was slowly killing her. The mother of 6 children died, believing her husband was trying to help her get better, never knowing that the person she trusted most in the world was the one stealing her life away, one poisoned drink at a time. What do you think should happen to people who abuse the ultimate trust of marriage to commit murder? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime chronicles that expose the darkness hiding behind closed doors.
Was having an inappropriate sexual relationship with his underage niece.
It was a Wednesday, December 19th, 2018, the last week of school before Christmas break. Teenagers at Terry Parker High School in Jacksonville were thinking about holiday parties, last-minute assignments, and winter freedom. Except one girl is thinking about something else entirely. Iana Sawyer, 16 years old, 5 months pregnant, and still showing up every morning with her books, her backpack, and that quiet determination she always carried. She didn't complain. She didn't cry for help. She didn't act like she was afraid. But maybe she was. That day, Iana left class early, just after 11 a.m. A surveillance camera captured her walking out of the school building alone. She told the front office she had a family appointment, said her uncle was picking her up. That same uncle, whom she had always called trustworthy. The one her mom had always warned her to respect. The one everyone believed had her best interest at heart. But Iyanna never came back. She never returned to school. She never made a home. She never sent another text message. And no one saw her again. At first, people assumed she ran away. After all, she was pregnant. Maybe she cracked under the pressure. Maybe she got scared. That's what they thought. That's what he wanted them to think. But soon, investigators would discover a much darker truth. A truth buried under layers of silence, family trust, and a horrific secret no child should ever carry. What happened to Iyanna didn't begin that morning. It didn't start at the school gates, or even when she got in the car with her uncle. It began long before, behind closed doors, in places where no one was looking, in moments where no one was listening. And by the time the truth surfaced, Iyanna was already gone. This is not just the story of a missing girl. It's not just the story of a murder. It's the story of how trust can be weaponized, how silence can protect a predator, and how a family's darkest betrayal was hiding in plain sight. It began as a routine school day, but by nightfall, something was wrong. Iyanna Sawyer had not come home. Her phone was off. Her social media, silent. Her last seen location, the front office at Terry Parker High School. She'd signed out early for a family emergency. That emergency didn't exist. Her uncle, 33-year-old Jonathan Quiles, was the one she was reportedly meeting. But when police questioned him, his story kept changing. He claimed he didn't see Iyanna that day. Then he said maybe she came by the salvage yard briefly. Then he wasn't sure. It didn't take long for inconsistencies to pile up. Family members gave vague or conflicting timelines. No one seemed to know why Iyanna had left school. No one, not even her mother, had heard from her since 11 a.m.
Ma'am, I have no idea. This is not like, this is out of character for her. And for me to call you all, something's wrong.
Surveillance footage confirmed she'd left alone, walking calmly toward the pickup area. The only known destination, Jonathan's auto shop, the same one he'd worked at for years. The same one where he claimed to be all day, alone. And then, one chilling detail changed everything. A confidential family source told detectives. Iyanna was pregnant, 16 years old, 5 months along, quiet, reserved, and not dating anyone. That detail turned an already tragic missing person case into something far more disturbing. The father of the unborn baby wasn't a teenage boyfriend, wasn't a stranger. It was her uncle, Jonathan Quiles, her legal guardian during the week, a man she was supposed to trust. That one revelation cracked the case wide open, not just because of who he was, but because it revealed what he was hiding. Now, it wasn't just about where Iyanna went. It was about why she had to disappear. Detectives now had to answer a question far more chilling than where is Iyanna? They needed to know, what had he done to her? And how long had this gone unnoticed? Once the paternity of the baby was confirmed, detectives brought Jonathan Quiles in for formal questioning. The interviews were unsettling. Quiles showed no panic, no concern, and more importantly, no remorse. He denied any involvement in Iyanna's disappearance at first, but when presented with cell tower data, security footage, and most damning of all, the DNA confirmation, his story crumbled. According to statements made by Quiles' own brother, Joseph Quiles, Jonathan confessed to the killing. He allegedly told him that he'd shot Iyanna in the head, that he'd placed her body in a dumpster, that the dumpster was picked up by a waste company and sent to the Otis Road landfill. That admission triggered a massive search operation at the landfill. A grim, nearly impossible mission. 5,300 acres of trash compressed and layered. But no trace of Iyanna was ever recovered. Her body, to this day, has never been found. Despite the lack of a body, investigators built their case. And in the most damning moment of trial testimony, his own family took the stand against him. Joseph Quiles told the courtroom. He looked me in the eye and said, "I had to get rid of her. She was going to ruin everything." When pressed further in interviews, Quiles admitted to having sexual contact with Iyanna. He spoke with chilling detachment, as if none of it mattered. For Iyanna's family, the betrayal was overwhelming. This wasn't just a crime of violence. It was a crime of control. a systematic abuse of power, a predator embedded in the family, trusted, respected, even loved. He destroyed a young girl's life and her future to protect his secret. But it didn't work. In the face of mounting evidence, the court found him guilty on all counts. The sentence: 3 consecutive life terms without parole. But for those who loved Iana, the justice system could only go so far, because there is still no grave, no body. Only a question that still haunts this case to this day. Where is Iana Sawyer? It was more than a trial. It was a reckoning. By the time Jonathan Quiles entered a Jacksonville courtroom in early 2020, the community already knew his name, but they didn't know the depth of what he had done. The courtroom was tense. Iana's mother sat front row, clutching a framed photo of her daughter in a white dress. Her eyes swollen from sleepless nights, her hands trembling as testimony began. There was no body, no physical remains, but the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors built their case brick by brick. DNA proof that Quiles was the father of Iana's unborn child. Phone records placing him at the auto yard, the last known location of Iana. Surveillance footage of Iana leaving school and vanishing into thin air. Witnesses recounting strange behavior, inappropriate touches, and late-night texts. His own brother's testimony, claiming Quiles had confessed to killing her and disposing of her body in a dumpster. One line from that testimony silenced the room. He said he did it because she was going to tell her mother, and he couldn't let that happen. Inside the courtroom, every detail felt heavier than the last. But it was when detectives took the stand, recounting what they'd heard from Quiles himself, that the atmosphere changed. He admitted to sexual contact with Iana. He acknowledged the pregnancy, but he denied killing her. The contradictions only deepened. And then, in a moment that drew audible gasps from the gallery, the prosecution played a chilling excerpt from a recorded jailhouse phone call. Quiles, laughing with a relative, said, "They can't prove nothing without a body." Cold, calculated, smug, as if the absence of her body erased the truth. But it didn't, because Iana's presence, even in her absence, was undeniable. Her text messages, her voice notes, her friends who testified about how withdrawn she became in those final weeks. Her school counselor, who revealed Iana had once whispered, "I'm scared to go home sometimes." The prosecution rested its case with one haunting question. What kind of monster murders his own niece just to silence her? The jury deliberated for less than a day, and when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the sentence, life in prison, without the possibility of parole. No emotion crossed his face, just a blank stare, as if he still believed he'd outsmarted everyone. But outside the courtroom, it was a different story. The case exploded across Florida and beyond. Headlines screamed, "Body still missing, family demands answers." Child sexual abuse ignored until too late. On social media, hashtags trended. Hashtag justice for Iana. Hashtag protect our girls. Parents began demanding more school counselor screenings. Nonprofits launched awareness campaigns around incestuous abuse, a topic often shrouded in silence. Survivors came forward. Stories surfaced from across the country of young girls silenced by relatives, shamed into secrecy, ignored by systems meant to protect them. And in Jacksonville, something shifted. A local journalist summed it up best. This wasn't just the murder of a girl. This was the system failing her every step of the way. Iana's school came under scrutiny for allowing her to leave early that day. Questions were raised about how a 16-year-old, visibly pregnant, managed to keep that pregnancy secret from teachers, doctors, even family friends. The community, once close-knit and quiet, erupted with grief and guilt. And as candles burned on her vigil site outside Terry Parker High, people whispered the same line over and over. How didn't we see this coming? For her family, the pain was unrelenting. Her mother told reporters, "I don't get to bury my baby. I don't get to say goodbye. You took that from me too." But she also said something else, something powerful. "My daughter's voice was stolen, but it's our job now to make sure it's heard." Where's Iana? Even after the trial ended, even after the sentence was handed down, the nightmare didn't stop. Iana Sawyer was gone. Her body never found. Her voice silenced in ways too painful to comprehend. For her family, justice didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival, inch by inch, through a grief that had no shape, no end. Her mother, heartbroken and hollowed out, would later say, "He didn't just take her from us. He took our ability to lay her to rest, to hug her one last time, to say goodbye." Each day became a ritual of remembering. Watching old home videos, listening to saved voicemails, touching clothes left untouched in her closet. Her siblings struggled in silence, some turning inward, some lashing out. One of her brothers stopped going to school altogether. The family home, once filled with laughter, became a place of stillness, haunted not by ghosts, but by what could never be spoken. Every birthday, every Christmas, every passing school bus, a reminder of the future Iana never got to live. But they weren't alone. The community rallied in ways no one expected. Within days of the trial's conclusion, a vigil was organized outside Terry Parker High School, where Iana had last been seen. Hundreds showed up. Some knew her personally. Many didn't. They came with candles, hand-painted signs, and tear-streaked faces. A choir of classmates sang Amazing Grace. Her best friend read a poem Iana once wrote in English class about wanting to travel the world, to become a nurse, to help children. One line from that poem has since been etched into a mural near the school gates. "I want to help others feel safe in their skin because I didn't always feel safe in mine." The school eventually installed a memorial bench in her name. A pink ribbon was painted on the back, Iana's favorite color. But beneath the gestures, the grief lingered. And with it came questions. Tough ones. How could this happen? How did no one notice the signs? Who failed her? In the months following the verdict, Iana's case became a flashpoint in Florida's legal and social justice circles. Lawmakers faced pressure from activists, parents, and child welfare advocates demanding change. How are familial abusers slipping through the cracks? Why isn't there mandated reporting for unusual behavior between minors and relatives? How many other Ianas are suffering in silence, under the same roof as their abuser? In response, a state-level task force was formed, dedicated to re-evaluating how schools and child protection agencies handle reports of suspected intrafamily abuse. One reform proposed, but reforms weren't enough for many, because no matter how many bills passed, Iana was still gone. And Jonathan Quiles, the man who had shared family dinners, posed in Christmas photos, and once helped Iana with homework, had destroyed everything from within. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a shadowy figure hiding in the dark. He was family, and that, above all else, was the hardest truth to live with. I still wait for her to walk into class. She was the one who always made you laugh, even when things were bad. We didn't know. We just didn't know what she was going through. Teachers, classmates, neighbors, each of them haunted by missed signs. Guilt, regret, a silent, shared sense of failure. The family, in their own time, turned pain into advocacy. Iana's mother began speaking at high schools and local youth centers. She founded the Iana Sawyer Foundation, focused on supporting victims of sexual abuse within families. The foundation's message was blunt, unflinching. Monsters don't always come from outside the home. And on the anniversary of her disappearance each year, a community walk is held in her name. They carry signs, wear pink, and release lanterns into the sky. But even amid all that light, the darkness of what happened to Iana never truly fades. Because there's still no body, no burial, no resting place. Just a missing girl, a broken family, and a question that lingers unanswered. Where's Iana? Jonathan Quiles was convicted, sentenced to life, locked away forever. But that wasn't the end of the story. In many ways, it was just the beginning, because the questions didn't stop with a guilty verdict. In court, Quiles claimed he had no idea where Iana's body was. But detectives believed otherwise, and they still do. Months of searches, dozens of leads, and even cadaver dogs led investigators to a landfill in Georgia, where they spent weeks combing through debris, hoping for a trace of her remains. But they found nothing. Not a hair, not a bone, nothing. And to this day, Iana Sawyer's body has never been recovered, which means her family, even after years, has never been able to lay her to rest. There's no grave to visit, no stone to etch her name into, only memory. And that memory, bright, innocent, trusting, stands in unbearable contrast to the truth that her killer was someone she called family, someone she had once hugged on Christmas morning, someone who didn't just take her life, but tried to erase every trace of it. After all, Iana was pregnant at just 16, and not one teacher, not one friend, not one adult noticed something was wrong. Had anyone reported an uneasy feeling? Had she tried to tell someone, only to be ignored? Or was it fear, shame, loyalty? We may never know. But what we do know is that this wasn't just a crime of violence. It was a crime of trust. And that's what makes it so much harder to see coming. So monsters don't hide in shadows. They sit at the dinner table. They smile in family photos. They tell you they love you right before they take everything. And until Iana is found, until the full truth comes to light, one question will hang in the air. Where is she? If this story moved you, consider sharing Iana's name, because her story is not just about justice. It's about prevention, and about the children still living in fear behind closed doors with no one listening. But this wasn't the only case where family became the threat. Sawyer's story should have never ended this way. She was young, bright, full of promise, and she trusted the person who took everything from her. If this story made you pause, made you angry, or made you think, don't let it end here. Backhand index pointing right, share her name. Talk about the warning signs. Break the silence. Because silence protects predators, and awareness saves lives. Speech balloon, drop a comment. What do you think could have saved Iana? Bell subscribe for more real stories that demand justice.